you be mine? It's a neighborly day in this beauty wood, a neighborly day for beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you. So let's make the most of this beautiful day. Beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please won't you be my neighbor? WMFD.com. It is Coffee Talk with Jay Fox, and we are sponsored in part by the Cove Coffee Shop in Ontario, Ohio. And thank you to the late Fred Rogers for bringing us in. Every time I hear that song, I get misty-eyed because that represents my childhood. And from the time I was 2 years old or so until, I was a full-time first grader, going to school all day, Mr. Rogers was a part of my life. And I learned what it meant to be a neighbor. I learned the people in my neighborhood, the folks that lived next door on either side and across the street. We knew the name of the gentleman, Al, who delivered the milk on Tuesdays from Hillside Dairy. Herman Hansen was our mailman. He came at 4 o'clock every afternoon. We knew our people. And it was a beautiful time in the early mid-70s when you could walk out of your house, you knew the people in your neighborhood, you cared about them, and they cared about you. Today on the program, we're talking with our friends from Richland County Mental Health and Recovery Services Board. One more time, Richland County Mental Health and Recovery Services Board, Joe Trollian, Sherry Branham, and Kim Lamb. And we're talking today about a brand new concept called Good Neighbor. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Joe, when you heard Fred Rogers, what was the first thing that came to mind?
I did everything I could to keep from singing along.
I know.
And anybody who knows me knows that was a monumental task. My daughter already says, is there anything you can't put a song to? Any conversation, little tidbits here and there. There's a song that had that in the lyrics. So
no wonder you and I are friends, because I do the same thing. We're gonna feed the cats this morning. Da, 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 da. That's exactly right. Sherry, what did you think when you heard Fred's voice?
Well, I thought back to my childhood, as did you. And growing up in the Appalachia, it was a very community-centered. Everyone worked on raising the kids in the community. Everyone cared. So, it was a real throwback for me to that time, and wishing that life could be more like that in my neighborhood now.
Okay. What about you, Kim?
I have my sweater on. I didn't have to put my tennis shoes on, but, since I'm kind of at home, wasn't the need. And honestly, I was like you, I wanted to tear up. I was like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not supposed to cry. We're not going to tear. But yeah, and like, the rest of us here, it was part of my growing up. And he was allowed to talk about things and teach me things. And then it allowed me to have conversations with my mom and dad or with my neighbors, or to apply some of the stuff that he talked about.
I think that one of the things that stands out about Mr. Rogers' neighborhood was the fact that he introduced the children and their parents, or grandparents for that matter, the audience, to the people that were a part of his world. And he had two worlds. He had a world of reality and a world of make-believe. And the world of reality included all kinds of different service providers that a child might encounter in their daily life. A policeman, a fireman, a first responder, an EMS worker, the mailman, construction workers, the doctor, somebody from a restaurant. And then in the land of make-believe, he basically duplicated that with the people that were in the neighborhood there. But it was the same exact tenor, the same relationships, regardless of whether it was King Friday's kingdom or it was just simply his own neighborhood on that street. And that's what we've talked about, and what we're going to talk about today is the concept of how to be a good neighbor. You know, we've gone through a very tumultuous year. We have gone through periods of division, periods of despondency, not knowing what's coming next. And in many ways, some people feel like they're out of control, like they cannot control their own narrative. And we know that we can only control ourselves. We can't control what other people do. We can control our reactions. And that being said, can we control what's happening internationally? No. Can we control what's happening in Washington, D.C.? No. Can we control what's happening in Columbus, Ohio? No. Can we possibly control what's happening in the county? Maybe. But can we control what's happening in our own neighborhood? Yes. So what I want to start today by doing is talking about what our definitions of what a neighborhood could mean. Joe?
I think it's most important that people look at this not as that geographical map that says your neighborhood exists from this road to this road, from this house to your neighborhood is based on you. So my neighbor, I have several neighborhoods. I have my neighborhood that I've lived with through this whole process. That's my wife, my daughter, my two in-laws. We've included them as part of our neighborhood. I have my work neighborhood. You know, we have a small office. There's 6 of us that work here. They're part of my neighborhood. I also have my actual neighborhood where I know the neighbors across the street. I know the neighbors next door, and I interact with them to the best of my ability. And it's really kind of taking us to the next level. We've done a great job of isolating and keeping things as close to the best. And I love the fact that Kim is getting us away from the term social distancing, because I've hated that. Because to me, we've been trying to combat social distancing for my entire career, because that's what people do when they're not doing well. They distance themselves from everybody else socially. So let's look at physical distance. We've done well at maintaining physical distance. Now we need to increase our bubble a little bit and start looking at our neighborhood. And we felt that was it was a way to reach out to additional people without violating some of these rules that we have in place to try to keep us healthy.
Sherry, what does it mean to you when you hear the concept of neighborhood? Do you agree with Joe? Do you have something to add to that?
I do agree with Joe, and of course I have something to add. I think
And that's why I love you.
Thank you. I think of my neighborhood, and I think of it being a place that I can make impact. I know many, and I would say most of my immediate neighbors. It's a place I can learn, I can teach, I can grow things. There's always community areas where you can plant flowers, beautify the area. It's a place I can nurture. I can nurture the youth that pass my way, riding their bikes or scooters. It's a place I can help and be helped when needed. And it's a place that I can improve. It's most of all a place that I have hope for change, for good change, for improvement.
Kim, when you think of neighborhood, what does that mean to you?
So as a virtual manager on social media, what I do is a virtual neighborhood. And through COVID, I've had to take what I do face to face, which I prefer. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm one of those people that I'm missing the hugs. I'm missing the handshakes. I'm missing being able to look across and see reactions and eye contact. And I said, okay, how can I do that? How can I make that happen virtually? And so a lot of us also have had to figure out how can we say our hellos
Mhm.
and stay in contact and reach out in a way that feels foreign, but still will let us, do what we do. So for me, my neighborhood, while it's very physical, the people on my street, the people that, they're in the work environments I'm in, since I work with different clients all over, I have not been able to actually go to their locations. And so we've created a virtual network. Our neighborhood can be in a Facebook group, or our neighborhood can be on Zoom calls. And so for us, it's a way that we still stay connected. We still support each other. For me, neighborhood is more about encouragement and support and uniting in a way that we're able to use our gifts to be better as a whole as we ever were alone.
Human beings were not meant to be solitary creatures. I was talking with a pastor this week over breakfast, and he was reminding me of the story of Adam and Eve and how, according to that doctrine, whether you believe in that or not, a companion was created for Adam so that he would not be alone. In this particular situation, with social distancing and having to isolate, whether because you're sick or because you don't want to get physically ill, some people find themselves in situations where, because of their life situation, they are living alone and they have no access to human companionship because they live in a solitary situation. Joe, when we think about the effects that loneliness has on the brain and how it relates to a downward behavioral spiral, what are some of the risks of loneliness?
Well, some of the biggest risks that we look at is most people who have attempted to take their lives or have taken their lives, we can track back to a period of loneliness. We do what are called psychological autopsies on just about every case. And in those, we will usually find those signs and symptoms that the person was withdrawing, the person was starting to isolate, or the person was not being seen, giving some of the signs that we usually look for. We will also see people, it'll be more of a physical reaction, weight gain, having a harder time maintaining health, more susceptible to colds. I mean, it can be as simple as get more headaches.
Mhm.
But it really takes a toll. So many people think the brain and the rest of the body are disconnected. It's all one organism. And so when something's not functioning in your organism, I know you love the term organism.
Easy. We're not telling that story on the air.
You can edit that out. But anytime you're dealing with a single organism, anything that's causing problems will affect every part. And so we really need to make sure that we're attuned to that. Loneliness is a huge factor in that, and in both the preventative aspects as well as the treatment. I know I'm a terrible sick person. When I'm sick, that's all I want to be is by myself.
Yeah.
But I also know that it takes me longer to get better if nobody is even just cracking the bedroom door up and going, how you feeling? Can I get you anything? Doing something to touch base with me and letting me know there's still human beings around me.
So here's the next question, and anybody can answer it. You have two situations. One is isolation and loneliness, where you don't reach out for help and you're not letting people know that there's something that you need. And then there's isolation and loneliness where there is no one checking on you and you don't have anyone to reach out to. How do we balance that? How do we encourage people to reach out for help when either they don't know how or they don't feel comfortable doing so?
Well, I'll promote one of our big pieces. We have a warm line in our county. That's 419-522-5300. This is staffed 24/7, and it is a line that is specifically designed if you want someone to talk to. And these are not therapists that are manning this line. These are people who have lived experience. They've had difficult times in their life, and they've come through those difficult times, and they want to just be there for individuals who need to talk. We have a crisis line. If it's a crisis level, we'll get you over to the crisis line. But for those people who just need to know that somebody's out there thinking about them or have that human contact, that's why we put this warm line in place. We started it, almost 4 years ago, and it fields about 3,500 calls a year. There are some days the phone doesn't ring at all. There are other days that phone is ringing off the hook. And it's good for the people working the line. It's good for the people using the line, because there's something you gain from that interaction, whether you had initiated the call or received the call. And so when I see that isolation, whether it's people reaching out for help or people reaching in to help, I don't see those mutually exclusive. I think there are things we can do on both ends.
Prior to my move last year, when we were on forced isolation, I got to know the neighbors in the 4 houses that were surrounding my home in Ashland. And one of my neighbors came up with a good suggestion. Actually, 2 good suggestions. One was, let's step outside on the front porch of our houses every day at 12:30 and just look at each other and wave and say hello. Okay, great idea. The better recommendation was each of us had a front window, and he went out and he bought construction paper. And he gave everybody 1 piece of red construction paper and 1 piece of green construction paper. He said, I want you to put the green construction paper in your window and leave it in your window at all times, unless you need something. Then you put the red piece of paper in your window instead. And in the case of one of the elderly neighbors, she put the red construction paper in one day, and that allowed us, it wasn't me, but it was another neighbor, to know that she needed help. Somebody went to her. Fortunately, the help was given and she's okay. But the point being is, it was a system and a process that a small group of people put together that worked for them. Is that something that can be replicated as one example of how to be a good neighbor?
Absolutely. I mean, there are so many ways to communicate now. I mean, you go back to Mr. Rogers and growing up. I mean, communicate, you remember the phones. They were anchored to the wall.
Yeah.
If you were lucky, you had a long enough cord that you could go sit in a closet and have a private phone call. You were relying on physical interaction. So yeah, if somebody wasn't well, you had to come up with creative ways to communicate. We have so many really neat methods now. And this is where I encourage people, look at your kids. Our kids are weathering this storm so much better than the rest of us. They were already into electronic communication. They already knew. I mean, we were complaining for years. I had 6 kids at my house and they all sat in the living room and they just texted to each other. Look who's laughing now, because they're still communicating and we're trying to figure out, how do I just need to talk to someone. They figured it out. Learn from them. And then let them know you're learning from them, because it makes them feel good too.
Absolutely.
Jay, I think part of it too is learning to communicate in ways that we haven't before. So the people that have always reached out for help, they'll continue to do that because in their history, they know that when they've asked, they've received what they needed. I think we now have a lot of people that have never had to ask for help before. They've never had to kind of raise that hand and say, you know, for the first time, I really need something. And we need to show them that there's people and a place and a process that exists that makes that ask easier, that says, yeah, we get it. Matter of fact, please ask.
Why
And
do
to
you
find
think people are embarrassed to ask for help? What prevents somebody from saying, I need something?
I think it's a couple things. One, it's just experience. So in the past, if you've asked and you got shut down, or you didn't get the response that you expected, then it makes it really hard to ask a second time. I think the other thing that plays into it is just our personalities. Some of us by nature are, I'm the solution. I'm not the person in need. And I've always wanted to be the person that helped, not the person that received help.
So when
And
the caregiver needs care, it's hard to ask.
absolutely. And so part of it is just very much about who we are, who we are as people, as our hardline personalities. And so part of it is saying, you know, am I someone who's not asking for help, not because I don't need it, but because I just don't know how.
Mhm.
I don't know the number, or I don't know the person. And that's the other issue too. So some of us have great supports. We have family, we have friends, we have, you know, people we work with that are asking. They're automatically saying, hey, I know I'm having trouble, so I'm guessing you might be having some trouble too. And then we've got some people that just are they're outside of these neighborhoods. And that's why we all have to consider kind of expanding our neighborhoods
Mhm.
and looking for someone who maybe wasn't in your neighborhood, but you're saying, wow, you know, they don't have neighbors around them, or I haven't even talked to them before. And maybe I should just make sure they're okay.
Absolutely. When you think about the choices that we can make to cope with the situations that we've been dealt, obviously, you can make the argument that when you say this is right, this is wrong, that you're passing judgment. It is a very personal decision. Let's talk about what it means to make good decisions for you as an individual. What does that mean, Joe? What are good decisions?
To me, it's taking that personal responsibility. I can take care of myself, and I want to make decisions that are going to make me happy, but I also have to do that with the caveat, what makes me happy can't harm somebody else.
Okay.
So I need to make sure that my decisions are such that I'm not impacting other people in a negative manner. So, you know, I've had the question. I'm not a big proponent of being forced to wear a mask or anything like that. But you know what? I wear one
Mhm.
because in my mind, it hasn't harmed me at all. I haven't come up with this terrible rash. Yes, my face always looks like this, so it has nothing to do with the mask. It's not causing breathing problems. It takes 2 seconds for me to put it on. Yes, I'm the person. I walk out of the store and it's like whoosh, victory.
Mhm.
It comes off, it goes in my pocket. If it helps other people, I'm good with it. I don't like them. I will be thrilled the day that I can have a bonfire and all my little cloth masks will just go up and smoke. But you know what? It's not hurting me at all to be able to do that. And so that's a piece that I can do because then it also allows me to get out of my home. It allows me to expand my neighborhood. So there's a positive and negative, but I work with them. And like I said, I can feel very comfortable that my decisions are not harming anybody else.
And that's the most important thing that you said, is no matter what you personally need to do to be mentally healthy and physically healthy, those choices are yours and they're very personal decisions. But if the choices that you make cause harm to another individual, either in mind, body, or spirit, those are not healthy choices. Sherry, what do you think?
I actually am sitting here thinking of an example that kind of touches much of this conversation. When COVID first came to town,
I'm sorry. I just have this like Wild West image. The guy on horseback coming into town. There's COVID. We're in trouble now.
I had several weeks at home because of an immune issue that I have from medication I take. And it's just simply for arthritis, but it does compromise my immune system. And I've always been the helper, never the person getting help. So being stuck at home for a period of time was very difficult. And I didn't really want to reach out for help. So I thought, well, I need to find a niche, what do I do? How can I help? And masks were, not very available. So I had a sewing machine and some material and I started making masks. But what came from that, bigger than that, was a community of people all over the county that I could give to in the form of a mask. But in return, there were so many amazing people that stopped at the grocery or brought stuff from the office that I needed. It was just amazing, the neighbors, the friends that came out of the woodwork. And I think that we all have that opportunity in regards to helping through something that you can do, through a skill that you may have, through encouragement that you may offer. And then in return, you will receive those blessings as well in whatever form it may be that you need. So I think each of us has something that we can give to our neighbors, to our friends. And in return, if we need something, oftentimes they will identify what you need and you don't even have to ask, because people are gracious in general. Richland County is an amazing county. The
Right.
people in this county are amazing. In our system, we see that all the time, mental health and addiction treatment. People are always stepping up to help this office, help people. So I think it's important just to identify what you can do, even if it's something small, and reach out and help people. And then in return, accept their help in regards to what you need. If that's encouragement, if that's, a struggle that you may be having with depression, phone call, text, there's a crisis text line, there's so many resources that we have as a board. And if you go to our website, richlandmentalhealth.com, you can find all sorts of resources that can help. So that's kind of where my mind went.
And it's a it's a personal and conscious choice. And I'll give a working example and then we'll hear from Kim. I happened to run into Save-A-Lot because I needed some bananas and I didn't want to wait in excessive lines, and Save-A-Lot is usually very quick in and out. So I got the bananas and I noticed as I was walking through the store that they had turkeys on sale for a ridiculously low price. So I got a 24-pound turkey for $5. Okay. I cooked the 24-pound turkey. Regardless of your opinion, I cannot eat 24 pounds of turkey. So there were some neighbors on my street that I've made friends with since I've moved to Madison. And I simply called them and said, I've made too much food. Do you like turkey? The answer was yes. So I packed it up. They came to the door. I handed them a bag. Thank you very much. Doing okay? Great. Wouldn't you know, in the 2 weeks that followed that, there were care packages left at my front door from those neighbors with things they had made. To me, that's the culinary way of being a good neighbor. Kim?
Sometimes we just need a spark. And I think that's what you did. Our actions cause chain reactions, good and bad. And so the fact that your turkey came back to you tenfold was why we do what we do. So for me, I work with businesses, and each business is its own entity, kind of like an individual. And through COVID, while they all had similar restrictions, each one of them had to figure out how their business fit to that restriction. How do we make it happen? Some of my businesses are small. They had to actually shut down the inside because they couldn't do the spacing. Some of them were large and had to figure out logistically how it works. And while there are a lot of things about COVID that I don't like, there are some really amazing things that happened because of COVID. Our businesses changed the face of how they operated.
Mhm.
They found different ways to serve us. They tried doing things that, honestly, I'm not sure they would have tried had they not put in a position that we needed to do something else. And so I also watched them reach out. Now, in Richland County, our businesses do work together really well. So that wasn't a new concept that happened, but they started reaching out more often and contacting each other and saying, what can we do and how can we do it? One of the things that Destination Mansfield did was they figured out how can we join food, and then our artists are out of work, and get it to the people who need food, because that was back when we were all pretty much homebound. And so they did dinner and a show. You could have your dinner delivered, you could watch a show online. And while it wasn't maybe what we all thought was ideal, because if you're a live music fan, you'd rather be sitting in front of them listening, it was a way for us to receive something that we needed in a brand new way. And so, so that was a way that I had learned to let them make their decisions. And as their manager, my personal opinion, that wasn't what it was about. It was about respecting what they wanted to do, how they wanted to do it, and how I serve them in doing that. And so that's the other thing about neighbors. In my own lived experience, when it was overwhelming for me to function and kind of get out of my own head, the best thing I do is serve someone else. It kind of lets me step out of where I'm at, lets me step out of maybe just things I can't figure out. Like, have you ever had a math problem that you looked at and you couldn't make the numbers add up, and you knew it was something simple, but you had to get up, walk away, come back to it, and then all of a sudden the issue just jumps right out and you can solve it. And so I think that's what we can do as neighbors for each other. We can help give different perspectives, and we can help us either solve the issues or let us go back with a new perspective on a different way to fix the challenges that, quite honestly, we all have. Because this is the first time in my life that I've had a collective situation that my entire world. And so I'm saying, if we're all going through it, how can we make it better for each other?
I think you have summarized everything that we wanted to talk about exceptionally well, and we're going to go out on that today. Our guests have been Joe Trollian, Sherry Branham, and Kim Lamb from Richland County Mental Health and Recovery Service Board. Sherry, what's that website again?
It's www.richlandmentalhealth.com.
richlandmentalhealth.com. And Joe, what's that warm line again?
Warm line is 419-522-5300.
And of course, 211 if you have a real problem. Right.
Jay, can I just mention that we have a one-pager on our website that has all of our contract agencies and affiliate agencies on there. It was updated the beginning of January, so it's current. And we encourage people to at least search that out if they search nothing else out. So
Yep,
a lot
absolutely.
of information that's very helpful.
We want you to know it before you need it. This has been Coffee Talk. I'm Jay Fox. Thanks in part to the Cove Coffee Shop for their sponsorship in Ontario. It's a service of WMFD TV News and also available on WMFD.com. Thanks so much for watching and listening. We'll talk to you next.